Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Here they come, filing in the door. Welcome to boot camp. How are you guys? Head on over to the chat. Let us know how you're doing. How are your studies going? How's that study situation going?
Yeah, and that's really the important part, right? Like, we want you guys to pass the test, which is part of it, but I want you to go out and be good trainers. That's the real part about it. So you could do a good job for yourself, for your clients, and then maybe you can be like us and be the people that stay in this industry for a long, long time. A lot of people come in and come out, but sometimes it's because they didn't get pointed in the right direction of how to do a good job in this field. So you guys have been great about sending us some great questions. Please do keep that going because we like to talk about everything that helps you to pass the test, but probably, if we're being honest, we like to talk about all the stuff that's going to be helpful to you all in getting out there and being successful at the job. So please feel free to throw questions in there. If we don't get to them today, Jenny just told me she's got a fancy spreadsheet open on her side where she's copying and pasting so that we can have them there for us on Friday.
Yeah, we got to write stuff down, guys. We're getting old. We can't remember everything.
Man, who are you telling? I was just theragunning my hip before we started.
Oh, no, John, that's bad.
It's good for you. It's good for you. But here we are, guys. We're here in week 3 of CPT, or Certified Personal Trainer Bootcamp. Just to keep you all straight, I know some of you are in nutrition, but this is Personal Trainer Bootcamp today. We're going to talk about some of the principles of program design. Your hosts for today, nothing's changed. I'm going to get used to calling Jenny Liebel instead of Jenny Scott.
I know. I need to update this.
So I'm gonna keep working on that. But in either case, same person, just a newly married person, a brand new name. Hey, I'm not that good, Jenny. I can't go through all the information.
Sorry.
But yeah, and like we mentioned in week 1, plenty of experience behind us. So please do send us any questions. And again, today, principles of program design. This is the big one, because if you understand the principles of program design, then you can be the artist. You can make programs based on scientific principles. It's not me telling you that you should do this exercise right after that exercise. And just spoiler alert, if there's anyone out there telling you that this exercise always has to come after that exercise, that can't be the case. That can't be true. And you would know that if you understand the principles of exercise and the principles of program design. So we do get to cover that today. So let's jump into it. But first, just a couple of reminders. We got some reminders about the tests with an S on the end. Online exams are untimed and open book with unlimited access. So again, keep in mind there are 2 different versions of the final exam that you can take to become a certified personal trainer. Can you take them both? Yes. Do I think you should take them both? Yeah, I do. But you don't have to. But either way, either one that you finish, you are a certified personal trainer at the end. The accredited exam, they are proctored, usually by a person in a live testing center, but sometimes virtually. But it's just you versus the exam. There's a time limit of 2 hours. And that one, the major difference, as we've covered before, and we'll cover it again, the major difference is when you complete this exam, you may be more hireable by places that employ personal trainers. What do I mean by that? Some places want the accredited certification as a part of your resume in order to be able to be hireable for that particular place. Not all places have this requirement. A lot of them do. I would urge any of you, depending on where you are in the country or where you are in the world, to kind of look into some of the potential places that you want to work at to see what they are looking for. But again, keep in mind, you can take both tests, so please feel free to take both tests. I would also add that looking into the potential places that you might want to work for would be a good idea anyway. If you've been to different gyms, you will feel that there's a different look and feel and ambiance to all the different types of gyms. And you might want to pick the place that you feel like might be a good business opportunity for you, a good place to learn, a good place to grow, but also a good place to hang out. Because if you do become successful, here's what happens. You start hanging out there a lot. You're going to be there maybe 30, 40, 50 hours a week. You're going to want to like the place that you're hanging out for 30, 40, 50 hours a week. At least that's my opinion. The Fast Track, if you are using Fast Track, it is available in your student portal in the same place that you find everything else. With this course and student support, the information is there. So we've got the phone number. You can chat on our website, issaonline.com, and you can reach educational support at the email that's listed there. So please do utilize them. They're available all the time. They'll get back to you with whatever questions you might have. Let's talk about choosing your speed here for a second.
Real quick, Madison had a question in the chat. You mind addressing that?
I did not see that. Let's see. If you pass the final exam and the CPR exam, you get a certificate in the mail, or how does that work? So short answer is yes, you will eventually get a certificate in the mail. They take a little time to get to you, but you will get them, and you will get a digital version of the certificates as well. So once you're certified, and you have proof of certification, which is important when you're trying to get out there and go job hunting.
One thing I will say, guys, is the certificates are only sent in the US now. Okay, it's the CPT is the only certificate that's sent out. If you're outside of the US, it's printable and online only. Okay, so I just want to point that out.
Thank you for that. All right, now in terms of choosing your speed with your studies, we just have two different categories. Sprinter, expedite your finish and complete your course in approximately 1 month, and you can absolutely do that. Oftentimes when people are using the fast track, that is part of the purpose, is to get through things faster. The marathoner, you can take your course in bite-sized chunks and complete it in 3 to 6 months. Either way, if you finish fast or if you finish slow, you're still a certified trainer and still have all the capability to get out there and start doing great things in the world of personal training. I just know I tend to be kind of a sprinter when I'm trying to study. It's not always great for me, but there's, I like to get through like courses and things like that pretty quickly. But over time is usually when I start to really understand the details of different things that I'm studying. So I think there's value to both ways to go about it. And just keep in mind this. Let's just say you finished your course in like 1 week. That means you finished the course and you did enough in order to know enough in order to pass the test. Now, whether or not you feel like you understand it well enough to apply it, that's something that might take some time, and that's okay. We all become better as trainers over time. Jenny and I are still learning a lot of stuff to this day. So if you don't feel like you know everything about everything after you've passed this test, you're in the right place. That's okay. You're not supposed to know everything about everything, but what we want to do is just get you there, get you certified, and get you out there and start doing the job. And again, a lot of learning still happens after that. Okay, Jenny, if you can tell us a little bit about the fast track.
Yeah, great points, John. Yeah, let's talk about the fast track study guide. Okay, so first and foremost, this is a tool that's designed to help you get through your course materials and get to your test a little bit faster. Hence the name fast track. Okay, it's a fast track to the exam, which hopefully is a fast track into your career. All right, now, if you have the fast track study guide, you will see it in your course. Okay, so it'll look something like this. On the left in your menu, you should see a link for fast track. If you do not see this link, before you panic and start calling and chatting us, it means you don't have it. Okay, not a bad thing. I'll have John throw the link for where you guys can purchase it or at least learn more about it if you'd like to, but we're going to talk through what it is. But if you do have it and you see it in the menu, you can click into it. It's 6 separate documents. Again, they're in, I'll explain in a second here, but they're in bullet point format, which is super, super easy to read. So it gets you through the material faster. Okay, why did we design this tool? Well, it's designed to get you certified, guys, in as few as 4 weeks, right? Faster is not always better. Thank you, John, for throwing that into the chat. Faster is not always better when you're getting certified, right? Especially if this is new for you. Like John said, there's tons to learn. This course only covers about this much of this much information. Okay, so there's a lot more to learn outside of this. But if you really want to be able to apply this and understand it, it's probably going to take you more than 4 weeks. But there are some people who want to get through it fast for some reason or another. Whether there's a job waiting for them, they got to get it done, they're whatever, right? If you need to get it done quickly, this can be a great tool to help you with that. It's also a great review tool before you take your test. Okay, it's designed to focus on the important topics in the course, meaning these are the things that an entry-level personal trainer needs to know, not the nice to haves. These are the need to haves. All right. And the content is the blueprint of also what is on the final exam, which we will talk about in just a moment here. We're going to give you the breakdown of where are these questions coming from. It is not hidden. We want you to be prepared. Okay. Now, when we talk about an exam blueprint, we're talking about, again, what an entry-level personal trainer needs to know. So when we were creating this course, when we were putting together this study guide, guys, it wasn't just something where John and I sat in a room with ourselves and we're like, what did we need to know? Let's just think. It was focus groups. It was lots and lots of people involved, and it was years of work to put this stuff together. Okay, but it's all based on from the club director level, from the hiring manager level, from the personal trainer level, right? From the person who works for themselves. What does an entry-level personal trainer need to know? We got lots and lots of input, and that's how we built this course. All right. It's verified with these accredited focus groups. And it outlines the major testing topics. Okay. That's what we're talking about. There's a question. What's the difference between the CPT and the bodybuilding specialization? Well, the names tell you a lot, right? The certified personal training course, which is what we're in right now, what does an entry-level personal trainer need to know? The bodybuilding specialization is everything you need to know about bodybuilding specifically. Okay, so the specializations that we have are just that. They are specialized material or courses on whatever the topic is. Okay, versus the CPT, which is general. Okay, now let's go over the different sections of the exam. So whether you're taking the accredited exam or the online exam, the layout of the exam is going to be this right here. Okay, so again, if you want to jot this down, take a picture, take a screenshot, whatever you need to do, guys, it's not hidden. It's also in the fast track study guide for you. Okay, there are 6 sections, or we call them domains, to the exam. Each section has a certain percentage of the exam questions that will come from that section. Okay, so let's talk through this. Applied science is our first domain, which includes the anatomy, the terminology, the kinesiology, which is human movement, and the physiology that we talked about in week 1. We have to know that because it's the foundation of everything that we do. All right, so 25%, a quarter of your test questions for either test will come from anatomy, kinesiology, and physiology. Okay, so it's important. We want to know that. We would want to focus on that when we're studying. Nutrition is our second domain. Only 10% of your questions will come from nutrition and that aspect of the course, which is just a chapter or 2 in the course. Okay, it's important, but it's not the focus of this course, right? I know a lot of you guys are in the nutrition course. Now that's another story. That's all nutrition. Okay, intake and ongoing evaluation. This will be 15% of your exam questions. So a lot of what we do is meeting new clients, figuring out their goals, trying to put together a program, okay? But the ongoing evaluation is going to be important, right? Assessing where they are and then periodically assessing where they are as they go through a program to see if we're making progress. We also have program design and implementation. That's a little bit of what we'll start talking about today. Creating a program for somebody that makes sense for what they want to accomplish and then delivering it, right? And being flexible, making changes to it, etc. That's going to be 25% of the questions on the exam. Our second to last is exercise selection, technique, and training instruction. This is kind of a no-brainer. We'll spend some good time on this next week. But picking exercises, how do they do the exercises? How do you cue the people, right? That's a good amount of time that we spend in our roles as personal trainers doing exercise selection, teaching people how to do the exercise and instructing them. Okay, so 15% of your exam questions will come from this section. And then finally, 10%, the last 10% of your questions will be professional practice and responsibility. Okay, so a lot of the extra things that are covered in your last chapter of the course will be covered on the exam. All right, now they're not necessarily in this order, by the way. The questions are randomized, so they'll be in all kinds of random order. That's how we truly test your knowledge. All right, now, John, I can't really see what's going on in the chat while I was talking because some of those are kind of long. Is there anything I need to address real quick?
Well, there's one that we can both address really quickly. So from Devin, Devin says they like the idea of the fast track, and there's some understanding of how the body works. But then the ending is what caught my eye, where it says, I kind of lack the people skills. I talk a lot, but I get nervous. So that's a great thing to, first of all, acknowledge about yourself, because not everyone would in the first place. But it's kind of like think of a basketball player coming to the NBA and they're like, okay, this person has a bad jump shot. Well, you better work on your jump shot. If your defense is bad, you better work on your defense. I'm telling you right now that if you know a lot about the body and how to do program design, but you feel like you're lacking in the people skills part of it, you better work on that part, period. Otherwise, you're going to have trouble having success. Now, how do you practice those sorts of things? I mean, you can practice at home. Here, think about it this way. You may know exactly what needs to happen for a squat. But have you actually ever said it to someone else? Don't let the first time you say it to someone else be when you're trying to work with a potential client. Just say these things out loud. And does it come out clear? Does it come out articulate? If not, at least you're practicing by yourself. Maybe you're practicing in the mirror at home alone or practicing on a friend or family member. Don't let that first time happen when you're in a professional setting where you're actually getting paid, right? So practice how you're going to teach someone how to do something. Practice. I've had people practice even the many different ways in which they might say hello to someone. And that might sound simple, but you might think in your head, oh, I know how to say hi to people. But in a professional setting, maybe it's a little bit different. So much the same way, how you describe an exercise, how you might describe your philosophy on eating. Have you said these things out loud? Because if you haven't, then it's going to be clunky when you're trying to articulate it to someone else. And the thing about being nervous about it, I would be nervous about something that I've never really done before either. The first time I had to do public speaking was basically the first time I became a manager and I gave a meeting, and I think I blacked out. Like, I don't even remember. It was just giving a meeting to my own staff. Fast forward to now, I have thousands of hours of public speaking under my belt. Nothing's changed about public speaking, but I've changed because I have experience and I've done it a lot. So one way to overcome a lot of those nerves is to just do that thing that makes you so nervous, do it 1,000 times, and then chances are you won't be so nervous about it. So again, practice saying a lot of these things, practice the communication part, practice articulating all these different ideas, and then just do it a lot. And oftentimes you can overcome a lot of those nerves.
Yeah, I would agree, you guys. I do this still after 14 years of doing this, especially when we can come up with all kinds of exercises, right? Maybe it's not something that somebody has done before. I run stuff by my husband all the time. I'll be doing it. I'll be doing weird things in the living room. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm practicing this movement to make sure that it makes sense the way I'm putting it together, right? But I'm like, if I explain, and I'll verbally explain it to him, how I would coach him to do it. So I want you to start here with your feet here, turn this way, grab this. Was that clear? Do you understand what I'm asking you to do? If he says no, I probably need to rework how I'm saying that. Does that make sense? Okay. So yeah, it's just practicing. So whether, like John said, you're practicing by yourself, or have a friend that you're like, dude, come to the gym with me and I'm just going to talk you through, like, you can do whatever you want. I'm just going to talk you through things and just tell me if it makes sense, right? Just practice. And don't expect to be great at everything from day one. So I love that you guys are bringing this up. We all started somewhere. No matter what it is in life, we all started as zero somewhere. Okay. There was a question from Torian too. If you already have the guided study, which everyone has, is it worthwhile to add the additional fast track? And it's $99. It's up to you. That's why we're talking about it, to make sure you guys understand what it is. Again, bullet point format, everything you need to know, right? And I'll explain how you work through it in just a second here. Okay. But if it's worth it to you to have that, then yes, it's available for you. But not everybody needs it or wants it. Okay, so that is completely up to you. So speaking of how we use the fast track, okay, absolutely, Katrina. Yeah, that's what we're here for. Here to give you guys some more information. So let's talk about how you use the fast track first. Okay, so this document, it's quite a few pages, but again, broken up into 6 separate documents that are for each of those domains we talked about. Okay, 1 per domain, so it breaks everything up. Now, you read through the bullet pointed list. Again, it reads very quickly. Imagine reading a shopping list. You can probably read it pretty quick. Okay, that's the way it's written. You read through it. Now, when you come across a term or a concept you're not familiar with, you go to your book, you find it in the book, and you read about it and you learn about it. And then you're like, okay, I learned that. And then you come back to the list and you continue on down the list until you find the next thing that you're not familiar with. And then you go back to the book, you find it, and you learn about it. Okay, so again, it's a fast way through the textbook without making you read every single page. Focus on the things that you don't know. So this is why I said it's a great reference tool or a review tool right before you take your test. Yeah, Cliff Notes. Yeah, very much similar to that. Okay, so it's very much Cliff Notes, but if you find things that you're not familiar with, go to your book and learn about it, and then come back and continue on. But if it's in that fast track study guide, you need to know it. Okay, so it's that simple. All right, super good. It looks like a couple of you guys have used it. Devin said you added it. Nice. Okay, so it's a super simple tool to use, and it's available if you would like it. All right. Now, I do want to point out a couple other things here for you guys. I did talk to you guys about this in nutrition. We have a bunch of brands that we partner with. It's not for us to be like, oh, ISSA is so cool, everybody loves us. I mean, they do, but it's because we want to make sure that you guys are set up for success in your career. On the screen here, you can see some of the brands. This list has gotten bigger since I put this slide in here a couple months ago, but some of the brands that we partner with, and all of these brands offer you guys either something discounted or potentially for free. Okay. There's a career development tab in your course. When you log in at the very, very top, there's a bunch of tabs that we've talked about before. The career development tab, professional development tab, I believe it says. If you hold your cursor over that, you'll see exclusive discounts. Okay, that's where you can find all these discounts that are there for you guys, and it tells you exactly how to redeem them. We have all kinds of things from supplement companies like Rain and Redcon on there. We've got clothing and apparel companies like Vivo Barefoot, which is barefoot shoes. Reebok is on there. We have equipment companies like TRX, and there's another one on there. Stick Mobility is another piece of equipment. PowerPlate is equipment. PowerTech is equipment. Okay, there's other education platforms on here like the MedFit Classroom. ISSA doesn't have everything, so go out and find more education. We're going to try and bring it to you. There's platforms on here like We Strive and True Coach for working with your clients. And there's even like Theraguns and stuff, Hyperice, Nimble, Therabody. You're welcome. You get discounts on all that stuff. Okay, so definitely check it out. There's plenty of stuff in there for you guys. In the same vein, we also have partner clubs that we work with. We want to make sure, guys, that when you guys finish your certification, you can walk into any fitness facility and say, I am ISSA certified. And they say, cool, we know what that means. Let's go. Right? We don't ever want you guys to walk in somewhere and they're like, nah, never heard of it. Okay, so we partner with these gyms from the top down so they know exactly who you guys are. More importantly, what do you guys come out of this certification learning and knowing? And what are your skill levels so that you guys can go get jobs? These are just, again, a short list of some of the companies that we partner with. 24 Hour Fitness, Crunch, New York Sports Club, F45, Orange Theory is now on here. I used to work for them. I loved it. Lifetime, Equinox, UFit, and more. Again, this list has grown since we put this in here last. Okay, so lots and lots of places that you guys can work if you want to work for someone else. Okay, lots to go in there. Anything else you want to add for that, John, before we dive in?
I was just going to add to this partner club one. This picture here is a good example of what I was talking about as far as the different look and feel and ambiance of different gyms, because some of these are very different. If you've never been into a UFC gym, I mean, there's people literally sparring in there sometimes, and there's grappling going on, and it's loud, and that's one feel. Whereas, I don't know, if you work into like Midtown Athletic Club, they probably hand you a Perrier when you walk in because it's real fancy. So definitely different look and feel. Crunch and 24 Hour Fitness are kind of in the same family of the mid-level sort of club where they have a lot of everything, but they're kind of mid-level in pricing. Whereas like Lifetime and Equinox, you're paying hundreds of dollars just for a single membership to be in one of those places. Whenever I tell those stories about push-ups with Justin Bieber or whatever the case may be, that was when I worked at Equinox. In LA. So again, Equinox is a very kind of LA, Hollywood, New York kind of brand, whereas a lot of these others are kind of somewhere in the middle. But again, a lot of different look and feel to a lot of them.
Yeah. So John makes a great point, you guys, and he brings it up because when you go out there and you're looking, if you want to work for a gym, we'll just throw this out there and then we'll move on. We can talk more about this on Friday. But when you go into a gym to apply, you want to make sure that environment and the people that you would potentially be working with fit you. If you're not a super fancy kind of person and you don't want to deal with the hoity-toities, maybe Equinox or Lifetime is not the right place for you. I used to work at Lifetime. I loved it. Cool facilities too. They're massive. But if that's not your jam, maybe you like that, grunge, concrete floors, like grunge music playing the whole time. Maybe that's your jam. Then find that. Does that make sense? Find something that fits for you where you feel like your personality will shine. Don't try and fit your square self into a round hole. Okay, that's why there's so many different types of gyms. And John makes a really good point. But check out the place. Usually when I was looking for jobs, before I would even talk to anybody about getting hired, I would go get a guest pass and go try working out there. See what you thought of the joint. Okay. Lindsay, everybody's your cousin. Stop it. She said Justin Bieber's my cousin. Stop it. You had me going last time, but now I no longer believe you. All right, so let's get into the good stuff for the day, you guys. Program design. So, John, explain to us why we're talking about this today.
Well, on one hand, it's like, no duh, we got to be good at program design. And as personal trainers, it's a big part of our job. What I will tell you from being on the operator side of things and the education side of things is that a lot of trainers are not very good at program design. They know lots of different exercises. And they know like Monday is chest day. So let's just do a bunch of exercises that make me burn around this area. But that's kind of low level training, in my opinion. Being able to really properly put together a program that meets the needs of the clients in terms of moving them toward their goal, but then also putting together something that meets the needs of the principles of science that we're going to go over. And then lastly, does it meet the needs of like, do they like it? That's an important part as well. All of that matters when putting together a program. And if I was your manager and I was to come up to you and ask you, why are you doing that exercise with your client? I would hope that there's an answer, but you'd be surprised how often there's not a great answer to that very seemingly simple question. So program design, very important. I would spend a lot of time mastering this part of the job because if you do become masterful at this job, it opens up, quite honestly, not just the opportunity to have great results from your clients, but opportunity to be able to, especially now in this day and age, create online programming that is something that you can sell as part of some of your services, which I think can be a really good extra thing to have in your bag as far as things that you can offer that can help you increase your income, but also maybe meet the needs of some clients who maybe don't have the time and resources to work with you one-on-one all the time. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that go into building these client programs. Number one, client assessments. So they're saying that if you're not assessing, if you're not assessing, then you're guessing. And it's very true when it comes to the world of personal training. If someone comes up to you and says, hey, I want to lose some weight, and you don't know what they need yet. I mean, that's a good first thing to know, but you don't know what they need yet because you don't know what their health history is. You don't know what their history with exercise is. You don't know what their likes and dislikes in terms of physical activity may be. You don't know if they have kind of a timeline or a specific goal. So assessing all these things helps us to understand the client that's in front of us before we make programs for them. We have the GAS principle, and this would be one of those scientific principles that I was talking about earlier. These scientific principles, they're not up to me, they're not up to Jenny. This is just how it is. So you can either follow science and follow how the world works, or you can just make up your own stuff. I would suggest follow the scientific principles when making program design. And the GAS principle, which we'll get into here in a second, is one of the very basic but very important ones to understand. We're also going to talk about the principle of individual differences, meaning one person is different than the next person in terms of how they will respond to exercise. We'll talk about the principle of overload, the set principle, principle of reversibility. We'll talk about the acute variables that go into creating a workout and an exercise program. And then we'll talk about the FIT principle and the 5 R's, which are kind of two different systems you can use in order to pair the acute variables to the training that you're going to create for your clients so that they can understand it. And also, as a trainer, I think it's nice to have little systems that help you to put together all these programs. I'll go into client assessments here. So like I said earlier, you're not assessing, then you're guessing. Here's a couple of things that client assessments can do for you. They can help you to build rapport in the first place, right? If you're just meeting a brand new client, they don't know you yet. They might know that you're a certified personal trainer, but they don't know if they trust you yet. They don't know if they like being around you. And those are important things to understand as a personal trainer. Is these people are going to be paying to hang out with you 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 hours a week. So in order for them to do that, and in order for them to continue to do that, they're going to want to like the experience of hanging out with you that much. Usually, some people, they don't like their trainer that much, but they keep going. That probably wouldn't be me. At some point, I probably want to have a decent relationship with my trainer. The client assessments allow us to understand our client and allow us to stay within our scope of practice as well. They may have some things going on that we can't deal with. Let's just call it some sort of chronic condition, maybe some sort of injury, and we need to refer out before we can start working out with them. They allow us to do some of the objective and subjective assessments. So objective assessments are typically things that are measurable and not up to anyone's opinion. So if I get on the scale and I weigh myself and I weigh 240 pounds, that's not up to me. That's not my opinion. That's how much I weigh. So that's objective information. Whereas some subjective informations will include, subjective assessments will include information that is more kind of up to the person and in some cases their opinion. For instance, if you were to just simply assess some of their likes and dislikes as far as exercise goes, then that's kind of subject to their opinion. We'll do things like calculate target heart rate. And then there are some very specific assessments, movement assessments, cardiovascular assessments, strength and endurance assessments. All of these matter. And there's a whole chapter about all of these assessments in your textbook. But first and foremost, when we're creating a program, we want to make sure that we properly assess the person that we're working with in the first place so that the program we make is based on all of that initial information. Before we move on to the GAS principle, Jenny, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, Brittany had a note. She was just noting that you said refer out before working with somebody in some cases. I just want to circle back to that because, guys, scope of practice is so important. As you get into this, you may come across some conditions that you've never heard of before, okay? Or people who have things that maybe you've heard of before, like we've all heard of heart disease or diabetes or high blood pressure, but you're like, oh, snap, I forget, or I don't feel comfortable yet working with this person. You can still work with them. We'll talk a lot about that in week 5. But my first question, whenever somebody discloses something like that, right? We don't probe, but if they tell me about something where I'm like, have you seen someone about that? And their response is no, refer them to someone about that. right? It's a great step. Keep yourself safe, but it also gives you more information, because if they go see a specialist about whatever it is, they can come back with information now. Is there anything they should be avoiding? Is there anything they should be doing? Is there anything else that you need to know, right? But if they haven't seen somebody about it, they might have just Googled it or WebMD'd it, if that's still a thing, and self-diagnosed everything leads to cancer, right? But they may not know what their limitations are, and you don't want to put them in harm's way. So it's always best to refer them to a professional to get that information and share it back with you. Okay, so don't be scared about it. When in doubt, refer out. That is the phrase that we like to use. When in doubt, if you are doubtful about anything, refer them to someone to see about it. Cool? Absolutely. Anything else, John?
Nope. That's it. Moving on.
All right. Yeah. So guys, again, we'll always give you the good. If you want some examples of referral situations or whatever, bring it to us on Friday, because I'm sure we both have plenty of examples. So let's dive into the first of the principles. So again, remember, these are rooted in science. They are not up to us. We didn't make these up, but these explain how our body responds to exercise. We're covering this one first because the gas principle really explains a lot of the other principles. Okay, so as we keep going through the next couple slides, we're probably going to be like, remember the gas principle? It kind of loops together, right? So they all kind of overlap a little bit. But GAS is an acronym. It stands for General Adaptation Syndrome. 3 letters, okay? 3 stages. It's a great way to remember it, by the way. P.S. You're welcome. Okay, 3 letters, 3 stages, GAS. All right, the 3 stages of the GAS principle. We talk about the alarm, right? So first, the alarm. Well, what is alarm, right? I'm not talking about your little alarm that wakes you up. It's a stimulus. Usually it's activity or exercise that your body's experiencing for the first time. Okay, your body says, oh, what are we doing? Oh my gosh, what is this? Right? And it has to then respond in some way to what you're doing, right? So for example, you get up and you go for a jog for the first time ever. Maybe it's only a half mile, whatever. But your body's like, whoa, 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 whoa. What are we doing? Oh my gosh, my heart rate was up. We were moving real fast. My legs were cycling. What are we doing? That is the alarm. I'm being funny about it, but hopefully this will help you guys remember it. Okay, the alarm is the initial stimulus. Usually it's the exercise or the activity that you are doing. Okay, your body says, hey, this is new, and it has to respond to it. Now, if you continue to do that thing, say you keep going for jogs every other day, so you don't kill yourself. Every other day you go for jogs and for the next couple of weeks. Okay, eventually your body will say, oh, I know what's going on. I'm used to this now. And that jog, that half-mile jog, it's not so hard anymore. That was easy, right? I'm not even sore. Okay, that's what we would call resistance. Your body has become resistant to what you're doing. It has stopped responding to what you are doing. Okay, some people like to think of this as a plateau. I know we've all heard that term before, right? Oh man, I was working really hard, and then all of a sudden things stopped changing, right? My weight stopped changing or my strength stopped changing. That's resistance. Your body has become resistant to what you are doing. Okay, now if we were to continue to do that thing, especially without allowing for adequate recovery, meaning time between sessions, letting your physiology recover and your energy systems, of course, we can reach something called exhaustion. Okay, when we reach exhaustion, it's relatively, we talk about overtraining and overreaching in the course as well. But when we reach exhaustion, it's pretty easy to tell what it is. Okay, because most people, their performance gets worse. Okay, so whatever it is they were doing, say it's a deadlift, their performance gets worse, meaning they aren't able to lift as much for as many reps. And they're like, why am I going backwards? Chances are their body is not recovered enough. They have reached exhaustion. Their sleep can suffer. Their attitude or their mood can suffer. Okay, their appetite can suffer. All kinds of things can start to go wrong when we reach exhaustion. Usually the only way out of exhaustion is to stop doing what you're doing and allow your body to recover. Okay, the big thing I want to point out with this, guys, is this is over time. This happens over time. It's not going to happen in one workout. John's not going to go and lift that weight for his bicep curls, get the alarm. All of a sudden he's resistant to it by the 3rd set. And then the 5th set, he's in exhaustion. It's not that quick. Okay, this happens over time. But this is why we need to periodically change what we're doing for exercise or activity. Okay, and it can be lots of things, not just the weight. Maybe the number of sets that we do, the overall training volume, which includes the reps and the sets and the rest periods, right? Maybe all of that something needs to change in order to continue to create a stimulus that our body has not seen before. Does this make sense, you guys? Give me a thumbs up and let me know that this makes sense, because this one, again, is going to be the root of a lot of the other principles. The 3 stages of the GAS principle. Okay, the initial stimulus, your body gets used to it, And if you keep going without enough recovery, you will reach exhaustion. Awesome. I got some thumbs up in the chat here. Excellent. So when we put page numbers in here, by the way, guys, the workbook is pretty straightforward. Page 58 in your workbook. The textbook pages, it's for the downloadable PDF textbook and the physical textbook. Okay, so you can find more about the GAS principle on page 298 and 299. All right. Anything else you want to say about this one so we can really drive this home, John, before we move on?
Sure. Like lots of times the way I'll describe this is you're adding stress to the body. And I mean stress in the form of exercise. And you can give it the right dose or you can give it the wrong dose, right? And if you give it the right dose, over time, you will build up resistance to it, which is another way of saying you got in better shape. Exhaustion, you might have overdosed on the amount of stress that you're adding to the body by either literally working out too much or working out so much and not recovering in a way where it's stress that your body cannot cope with. So again, you're adding stress and there's the right dose and there's the wrong dose. And as personal trainers, we want to help people to get to the right dose of stress that they're adding to the body.
100%. All right, John, let's talk about the individual differences. Go for it.
Yeah, so this is the principle of individual differences. Like I said earlier, we're all different, right? And because of that, physiology is physiology, but the fact is the way people are going to respond to exercise can have some subtle differences. In some cases, what feel like some pretty extreme differences, and some of that's going to be based on that person, their DNA, their genetics. And I think a lot of us kind of know this. Some people are going to be faster than others. Some people are going to be bigger than others. Some people are going to be able to stay lean easier than others. These are all some of the differences that we see in everyday life. And in much the same way, people are going to respond differently to the way that that exercise is going to affect them. So like it says there, everyone responds to exercise differently. Again, a lot of this is going to be based on genetics. And think about it this way. You can have several people doing the same workout, same exact workout, same exact reps, load, everything. And you would not expect everyone to get the same result out of it. Now, they'll all get a workout out of it, but they will not get the same result out of it. Some people have an easier time growing muscles. That's the case. Some people have an easier time growing arm muscles as in comparison to the other person, whereas the other person has an easier time having six-pack abs. These are all differences. So that's, this is part of the reason why when people come into you and they just read some health magazine and they're like, I want to do the Rock's workout so I can look like the Rock. It's kind of like, okay, well, we can work toward that, but it may not, the results may not exactly be the same as what the Rock got. Or another example, me and my brother, we look very much alike. I've had people start talking to me and then I realize, oh, they think I'm rich. They think my brother's name is Rich. They think I'm rich. And because I wouldn't know what they were talking about. And then I'd be like, oh, I think you got the wrong guy here. So we look that much alike. But genetically, we did have some differences. Running speed would be one of them. I ran track in college. He was not that guy. He was the type of guy that played goalie and catcher when he played sports. So speed was not his thing. So even though we looked alike, our genetics were different enough that we had different athletic skills. He was probably better with the hand-eye coordination, but we had different athletic skills. So this is how we kind of explain to people why we need personalization in personal training. This is why we can explain to people that when they're doing group training, that they cannot expect to get the same exact result as everyone else because they're a different person. They all might be moving in the same direction with their workouts and doing the same workouts. But again, different people are going to respond in different ways based on a number of reasons, in particular, genetics. Jenny, anything to add to that one?
Yeah, I would just remind you guys, this is a big one on why we can't create cookie cutter programs. You can't just write one workout and give it to everybody here. They're not all going to see the same results. We have to have some level of personalization based on, like John said, lots of different factors. The biggest one is genetics, like what could they possibly accomplish, right? Their training status, meaning how long have they been doing this? Are they good at it yet? Right? And all kinds of other factors, including age, gender, all kinds of things. Okay. So we have to have some level of personalization in what we're doing. This is a big one. Okay. So is our next one, the principle of overload. So this one very much ties into the GAS principle, that alarm, right? Now, if the alarm is me picking up this bottle of my digestive enzymes that sits on my desk and curling it, this is not enough stimulus or alarm for my bicep to really be like, oh man, we're working. My bicep's like, cool, we're just moving. Yeah, it's contracting and relaxing, right? But it's not working hard, okay? So if my goal is to gain strength and all I do is pick up this little pill bottle and curl for my biceps are not going to respond to that because the stimulus is not enough. It's not above and beyond what my body is accustomed to, The principle of overload, you might also hear it called progressive overload. Same, but different. Okay, same thing. You want to see a training adaptation. You need to give yourself an extraordinary stimulus, something that is above and beyond what the body normally encounters. Okay. Yes, over time, when we reach resistance, when we think back to that gas principle, that means that we got good, like John said, we got good at whatever we were doing. So your body's not responding in the same way, which means you got to make it more challenging. And it's not always weight. We can make things more challenging by adding more work, more volume, right? Others changing the speed. We can make things more challenging. Now it's a new stimulus and your body has something to respond to. Okay. So yes, over time, we will need to make things more challenging in one way or another. Okay. But if you're that person at the gym, we've all seen them, who does the same weight on whatever it is that they're doing for years and years and years and looks exactly the same, that's why they haven't given their body a reason to change. All right. Yes, it must be challenged in order to change. Great. Well stated, Brittany. Okay. This one is also important, you guys. When we're talking about putting together programs for somebody, yes, we're going to talk about periodization, but we have to be flexible with this one. Okay. But again, extraordinary stimulus. We need to also understand, that's what I was going to say. We also need to understand, you guys, what does someone do for work? So hear me out. If John is a construction worker and he's on his feet and he's moving heavy beams and working a tractor or whatever they do, I don't know what construction people do, right? Working heavy machinery, he's probably pretty strong naturally from his job that he does over and over and over again. So when John comes into the gym, using moderate weight may not be above and beyond what he's used to, right? Versus somebody who sits at a desk all day and doesn't do anything. There's a lot of things that could be considered above and beyond what they do. Does that make sense, you guys? So knowing what someone does for work and how regularly they do things like maybe they go to, sports with their friends or they play in a rec league for something. I need to know all these things because I need to know, what do you normally encounter? Because I need to be above and beyond that. So what they do in their life matters. This is why we ask these questions. Okay. Cynthia asked, is it when we get to exhaustion or resistance? So this would be resistance. Yep. Not exhaustion. Exhaustion is when things go into the toilet. Okay. But we're talking about things stop changing. Right? Oh, I'm not getting any stronger. I'm not getting any faster. I'm not getting any bigger, smaller, whatever. Okay. It's resistance. Their body has become resistant to what they're doing. Okay. Does that make sense how it all ties in? This one can be found in the workbook, page 58. Absolutely, Cynthia. And the textbook, page 297. What's next, John?
Next up, we got the SAID principle. SAID stands for specific adaptation to imposed demands. For quiz and test taking purposes, you're going to want to know that. The GAS principle was a general representation of how the body responds to stress. The SAID principle is going to be more of a specific representation of how the body responds to stress. So you can see that it says the body will respond exactly the way that you train it. And this is good or bad. If you sit in a chair all day, you're literally training your body at how to be good at sitting in a chair all day. That's why your body will change, your posture will change, tightness in the hips, back problems. You're actually getting better at being in the shape of sitting in a chair.
Isn't that weird, you guys? Does that just blow anybody's mind? That's crazy. You can get good at sitting in a chair.
Yeah. I mean, if you tell your body that I'm going to sit with my head and shoulders hunched over all the time, your body will start to adapt to that and make it actually easier for you to just be in that position all the time, meaning it reforms your structure so that you have a forward head and shoulder posture. In much the same way when we're thinking about exercise programs and some of the positive benefits we want out of exercise, just doing general exercise can get you generally better, generally in better shape, generally better endurance, generally better strength. But let's just say we have some specific goals, right? Like let's just say we have a sprinter for a track and field team. There's going to be a lot of running involved in track, right? But would the program just be, let's do some running? I mean, that's a good start, but I would say you probably want the proper dose of sprinting as opposed to just jogging. And although they're kind of like the same thing in terms of how a lot of people look at it, you're running or you're doing quote unquote cardio, you got to train your muscles to move fast. You got to train the structure of your body to go through these bigger ranges of motion when you're sprinting as opposed to jogging. And you want to give yourself the right dose of that sprinting in order for your body to make the adjustment and help you be better at sprinting. And by sprinting, that there's the mechanical part, right? Where you're teaching your body this range of motion. You're teaching muscles to move faster. You're also teaching your body to utilize that high-end energy system that we talked about last week, ATP, CP system, or maybe the glycolytic, depending on the race that we're talking about. So again, running is a good way to get better at running. If you want to get better at sprinting, then you better be sprinting. So then you start thinking about all the things throughout the day that maybe you do over and over again. Those are going to kind of dictate the structure of your body, how it works. Jenny had reminded me of something when she said to talk to your clients about what they're doing all day. I had a client that was an orthodontist. She was a left-handed orthodontist, and she would be kind of leaning over and turn this way a lot throughout the day, working on her clients. So her rotation this way was great. Her rotation that way was terrible. This was a specific adaptation to the demand she was imposing upon her body to be flexed at the hips and rotated to the right. So again, because she was doing that so much, we actually had to do in our exercise programming just some stretching and some strengthening the other way to kind of level her out. So again, GAS principle, a general description of how we respond to stress. SET principle is going to be a little more of a specific way in which we respond to stress. You'll find this in the workbook, page 58, and the textbook, page 293 and 295.
Yeah. Now, before we move on from this one, you guys, John brought up a really great point. Bring it up on Friday if you have questions about it, but the mechanics of what you're doing matters, right? It's one thing to be strong, right? Oh, I can deadlift X amount of pounds. But if you aren't good at running or sprinting mechanically, you're not going to do it well. You're never going to reach your full potential unless you mechanically understand how to do it. Okay. Same thing with these movement patterns. The more complex, the more the person needs to be fully dialed in, right? Lots of moving pieces, lots of room for error. More simple movements like isolation movements, those are a little less challenging for most people. Easy to do, less risk for injury, right? But I use the example of working with kids because that's something I do all the time. People are like, oh, can kids lift weights? Yeah, they absolutely can. Do they need to be loaded super, super heavy? No, right? But before you give a kid a weight, don't you want to make sure they can do that thing, whatever it is, squat, do a push-up, whatever, unweighted? Don't you want to make sure they have the right mechanics to do said movement before you give them weight to do it? We have to do the same thing with adults, right? You will come across people, guys, that have never worked out a day in their life, organized anyway, right? They've never done a squat per se, that they're aware of that it was a squat. Of course, we squat every day, right? But they've never been in the gym holding something on their back, their front, their sides, doesn't matter, and done a squat movement. You might want to teach them the mechanics of a squat, right? So we'll talk about that next week when we talk about progressions and regressions or variations of exercises. And I'll give you a quick example. If you're teaching someone how to squat, we do it every day when we stand up and sit down from a chair, right? So a great starting point for somebody might be having them sit on a bench and simply stand up and sit back down on the bench, right? And then you can progress it to where maybe their back is against a ball, exercise ball on the wall, and they're just going sitting down and standing up to a box or not, right? But they're supported, right? Or using something like a Smith machine or somewhere where they're, again, supported, using a TRX strap where they're supported, but their body is doing the same movement. Then once they've mastered that, now you can put some weight in their hand or give them a goblet or even potentially work to a backloaded position. Does that make sense? Okay. So keep the mechanics in mind. People have to understand the mechanics. And if you get somebody who can't control their body, you've got a lot of work to do. Okay. The next one is the use and disuse principle. Very straightforward. Okay. We like to call it use it or lose it. It's also known as the law of reversibility. You might see it stated. Okay. Basically, guys, all the adaptations, all the things that we can get good at, right? We can get stronger, we can get faster, we can get better cardiovascularly, right? We can control our heart rate if we stop doing the things that got us there. Okay, kind of like relationships. If you stop doing the things that got you to your marriage, probably going to lose your marriage, just saying, right? But if we all of a sudden stop training, if John is a sprinter in college, just stop training all summer and then came back in the fall, do you think he's going to be in the same spot he was in the spring when he left? No, right? Everything will go backwards because your body has no reason to continue to do those things. The stress, the stimulus is no longer there. Okay. So this is important when we're talking to clients who say, oh, I have a cruise in July. I just want to get ready for that. And then they stop doing everything after that. And they wonder why they get hurt or why they're weak again. Well, you stop doing everything, right? Consistency. You have to keep doing these things if you want to keep the adaptations. Okay. So if you don't use it, it will go away over time. Arguably, John and I have had some talks about this. Arguably, the first thing to go for most people, you guys, is your cardiovascular fitness level, right? Has anybody experienced that where maybe you take like a 2-week vacation or a hiatus from the gym, 3 weeks or whatever, you come back and you're just like, why am I so out of breath? Like my strength is fine. I can still push the weight that I was pushing, but man, I am out of breath. Because your cardiovascular fitness will probably, a couple of you guys. Yeah, Dorothy, after a knee replacement. Exactly. You might feel strong in other ways, but your cardiovascular fitness, you're like, man, why am I so out of breath walking up these stairs right now? Well, if you stop doing the training that you were doing before, that's usually the first thing to go. Strength, then that can happen in a couple of weeks, by the way. Okay, 2 to 3 weeks I've seen research on. But strength is another thing, right? And we can talk about muscle memory. That's something completely different. But strength might take a couple weeks or a couple months to start to decrease or decline over time after stopping doing the same stimulus. All right. So this is important. Again, consistency is key. We can't just take random breaks and take 3 months off and come back and expect to be in the same spot. Of course, you can work back up to it, but we have to make sure that we're keeping ourselves consistent. Cool. Anything else to add on this before we dive into the variables, John?
This is a good way to be able to preach consistency to your clientele. A lot of people want to do like a program for a while, but the reality is if you're consistent with the way you go about your exercise and consistent about maintaining some of the strength or endurance or power that you have, if you're consistent with those things, then you'll keep it. If you're not, then you won't. Pretty simple.
Yeah. And Wayne, I see your question. John, Wayne wants you to explain how to teach a squat. We're going to save that for Friday. I threw it in the spreadsheet. We'll cover it first. Okay. Good question. Sweet.
Next up, we're going to talk about acute variables. So some of these words or phrases you'll be familiar with because you've probably worked out before. So you've probably heard of reps and sets and volume. Now, earlier you heard me mention how we're applying stress to the body through exercise. These acute variables are what help us to determine the amount of stress and the type of stress that you're going to apply to the body. So when we're doing more reps and more sets, then that's more stress that you're placing upon the body. When we're choosing different exercises or different types of exercises, then those are different types of stress that you're placing upon the body. Just to give a quick rundown, one repetition is just one complete movement of an exercise. So if we're doing like a chest press, it's one complete full range of motion of that exercise. A set would be a group of repetitions. The volume is how much total work you're doing. So that's a measure of reps times sets times the load or the work that you're doing. So here's what I mean. It could be like 10 reps, 3 sets of 100 pounds. You would just go 10 times 3 times 100, and that gives you the volume that you've been working on. 10 or 3 sets of running 100 meters, you might use like 70% as your speed that you're running at. And that's how you would figure out total volume for that workout. So again, volume is a measure of total work being done. Very important if some of you out there are trying to grow some big muscles. Volume is actually the key thing that you need to be paying attention to when trying to progressively overload your body to get the result of bigger muscles. Rest is another important variable, and that's going to differ. We talked about this a little bit last week on why you might choose long rest versus short rest. The rest is going to be an important variable in between sets of exercises. Exercise selection. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why this is important. Some of it to meet the likes and dislikes of your clients, but also there are certain exercises that will help your clients toward better movement patterns, or developing the muscles that they want to develop. The intensity is a measure of how hard you are working. Usually, we'll look at it as a percentage of 100%. So if 100% is the maximum effort that you could give to something, and I needed you to go do work at 70%, then that's how you figure out how much weight to use, for example, in an exercise. If my maximum bench press is 100 pounds and I want to do 3 sets of 12 at 70%, then I would take 70% of 100 pounds, and that would be the weight that I'm going to use. So I would use 70 pounds. So again, the acute variables, you'll find this in the textbook. It goes over all of them, goes over all of these and then some, but this is how we determine the amount of stress and the type of stress that is going to be placed upon the body.
Absolutely. So definitely check those out. Let us know if you have any questions about the variables, you guys. So speaking of the variables, we want to wrap today with a couple quick little ways that you can remember the more important variables for different types of activity. Okay. So, and then John, there was a question in the chat for you after I talk about this. So the FIT principle, I like to call it FITT. It's an acronym. Another one, okay? This is closely related to cardiovascular training. Remember, cardiovascular training is not just running or rowing or riding a bicycle. It's anything that elevates your heart rate and challenges your cardiovascular system, okay? So think circuits or kettlebells or CrossFit type stuff. It can be considered cardiovascular training, right? But the variables that follow this acronym, frequency, intensity, type, and time. Okay, so think your way through each of these. Frequency, how often, usually over the course of a week, are you doing this thing? Is it 2 days a week? Is it 5 days a week? Right? How many times a week are you doing this thing? How often? The intensity, again, like John said, at what percentage of your maximum are you working? Right? If it's, say you're running, that could be a speed, a number of a speed, right? It could be 6 miles an hour, and that's 60% of your max being 10 miles an hour. Right? If it's a weight, it could be an actual load number, okay? But the intensity of what you are working at. The type, meaning literally what type of cardiovascular training are you doing? There's tons. If you literally Googled, I'll have to find it, John. I remember seeing a list that had like over 500 things on it that are considered cardiovascular training. If pick one, right? What are you doing? Chances are you want to pick something that's relatively enjoyable, because if it's not, they're probably not going to do it. Okay, just throwing that out there. And then you have the time, meaning literally, how long are you doing this thing? Is it 10 minutes? Is it 30 minutes? Is it 2 hours? How long are you doing this thing for? Figure these 4 things out for a cardiovascular training program and start there. When we start to reach resistance to this alarm, then we can start changing one of these variables at a time. Right? So say if John's doing 20 minutes of cardio, he's using the elliptical machine, for example, he's working at 50% of his 1 rep max, and he's doing it for 25 minutes to start. Okay. If we're ready to progress him, pick one. Don't change more than one, because then you don't know what's working. Say we just increase the frequency. So instead of however many days he started with, 2 days a week or whatnot, let's jump him up to 3 days a week, but everything else stays the same. That is a new stimulus for most people. Like John said, that's increasing their overall training volume. That's a good place to start versus trying to make it harder in other ways. Does that make sense? So pick one of these to change at a time, give it some time to work, start to reach resistance, and then find something else to change. All right. You can read about this one in your textbook, page 374 and 381. So John, I'll let you take this last one, but I don't know if you want to address Brittany's question real quick.
Sure. So the question is, how do you calculate the volume, like the 70% example you mentioned? So a couple of ways. So there's the repetitions times the sets times that 70%. So you're not actually multiplying by 70%. You're multiplying by whatever that 70% is. So again, if I did 3 sets of 10 at 70 pounds, then it would be 3 times 10 times 70 pounds. And then that gives me a total number. So that'd be 300 times 70, so that 2,100. So that would be my volume for that set of exercise. If I was doing it in the example I gave of like running up 100 meters, I would do it by the time. So I would have someone do like 3 sets of 100 meters, and I want you to do it all at 12 seconds or something like that. And that's how I'd figure out how much work they're doing, assuming that 12 seconds is about their 70% speed, approximately. So again, reps times sets times the intensity. Next up, we got the 5 R's, and this is more or less a way to group some of the acute variables for your resistance training, as opposed to the cardio that Jenny was just talking about. The 5 R's are rest, repetitions, recovery, range of motion, and resistance. So the rest we kind of covered a little bit earlier, but the rest is how much rest are you taking in between each set? The repetitions, how many reps are you doing? So are you doing 5? Are you doing 10? Are you doing 20? Recovery, usually that more relates to in between the workouts, especially now. It's recovery is like the big buzzword in fitness these days. There's whole places opening with no workout stuff. It's just recovery stuff. And I think a lot of people are just going to the recovery place without doing the workout part first. But, if it works for them, it makes them feel better. But usually you need to be recovering from something. But recovery would entail what you're eating, the sleep that you're getting, but also a lot of these things that you're seeing out there, like cryo, heat therapy, red light therapy, all kinds of stuff out there. The range of motion, this is an important one, because range of motion, there's not a range of motion for each exercise. You might read something about what the optimal range of motion for an exercise is in order to get the proper muscle stimulus according to this EMG that there might be something to that. But what's optimal for you or your client is what range of motion can they do? You know, like I always use lunges as an example, but if you step forward, you can only go halfway down while still maintaining control. Fine, that's fine. Eventually you'll get there. It'll just take some time. And then lastly, we got the resistance on there. That's more or less how much weight you're using. Where to find this? In the textbook, page 427 to 437. Lastly, we made it. Thank you guys. So just a couple of reminders here. This bootcamp recording will be available in your course in approximately 48 hours. The office hours, same time, same place, this Friday. And then don't forget, you'll get an email the day before with the link to join, and also an opportunity to submit any questions you may have via the email survey. So please do submit any questions you might have. If you had any here, if you have any between now and Friday, please do submit them. But of course, on Friday when you're here, feel free to ask your questions in the chat as well, and we will address them as best we can. Jenny, any last words?
Yeah, Brittany, I just want clarification. You asked about using someone's beats per minute or their heart rate. Do you have a question about like calculating target heart rate and what you would do with that? Because if that's the case, give me a yes or no. Because if that's the case, I will add that to our spreadsheet and we can talk about it on Friday. Okay, cool. Awesome. Yes. So we'll talk about that on Friday for sure. Estimating someone's target heart rate and when you would use that and when it would be potentially appropriate for somebody. Absolutely. Great question. And Isabel, yes, the office hour recording is posted. Guys, when you go into that CPT Bootcamp tab, you need to scroll down. Okay. The office hours are separate. They're down at the very, very bottom. Cool. Very nice. Awesome, guys. Excellent work as usual. We will see you on Friday. Bye, guys.